Hello, and welcome to Breaking APUSH News. I'm lead correspondent Lindy Ross.
And I'm Riley Leo, and we are currently in a hurricane, so please bear with us.
And we're here to bring you the best news with all the right facts. Here's our coverage on the current Watergate scandal. James McCord and Virgilio Gonzalez were previously caught and arrested for breaking into the Watergate headquarters in Washington, D.C. in an attempt to steal documents and wiretap the offices. Several organizers and insiders were also charged and were indicted in the office of the Democratic National Committee for trying to cover up the Watergate scandal. The accused included all four of President Nixon's former top advisors. They were once in some of the highest and most trusted positions in the United States government. Most were indicted on the case of lying under oath and obstruction of justice. The big picture question here is, why is President Nixon involved and where will he go from here? The federal grand jury today did not publicly accuse President Nixon of any crimes. However, Federal District Judge John J. Sirica ordered that the report on President Nixon, as well as any other information or possible evidence, be brought to the House impeachment inquiry immediately. This may clarify how ties were created between Nixon and the shocking scandal. Our focus today is on the cover-up aspect of the Watergate. The names of some of the most prominent figures have been released. John Mitchell and John Ehrlichman, who have history in other related cases, as well as two others that were indicted for the first time, Bob Alderman and Charles Colson. Three other men were Gordon Strong, Robert Martin, and Kenneth Parkinson. All of these men work or have worked closely under the orders of Alderman, Mitchell, and President Nixon himself. Several specific figures may be important in regards to President Nixon's future. We now move to lead reporter Riley Leo, who has the further details about this.
Thanks, Lindy. Alderman, who was the highest in power amongst Nixon's advisors, as well as the person with the greatest personal connection to President Nixon, has been charged with perjury, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice for his role in the cover-up of the Watergate scandal. This involves John Dean, one of those who had initially aided the cover-ups that guided the implication of Nixon and his assertion before the Senate Watergate Committee. Dean states that President Nixon appeared to be raising funds to continue payments for the silence of the Watergate defendants.
The president about the fact that there were money demands being made by the 7 convicted defendants, and that the sentencing of these individuals was not far off. It was during this conversation that Haldeman came into the office. After this brief interruption by Haldeman's coming in, but while he was still there, I told the president about the fact there was no money to pay these individuals to meet their demands. He asked me how much it would cost. I told him I could only make an estimate that it might be as high as $1 million or more. He told me that that was no problem. He also looked over at Haldeman and repeated the same statement.
Alderman denied the statement made by Dean. He twisted the story to change the content of what was said and what he had heard, claiming it was different from what Dean presented to the court. These conversations were taped by Nixon, who had a device for it in his Oval Office, and Alderman places much faith in the tapes, hoping they support his perspective. The officers of the committee do not waver and remain suspicious of the whole ordeal. However, President Nixon stands by Alderman and his possibly warped version of the story.
Mr. President, could you tell us your recollection of what you told John Dean on March 21 on the subject of raising funds for the Watergate defendants?
Certainly. Mr. Haldeman has testified to that, and his statement is accurate. So that was why I concluded, as Mr. Haldeman recalls perhaps and did testify very effectively. One, when I said, John, it's wrong, it won't work, we can't give clemency, and we've got to get this story out. And therefore, I direct you, and I direct Haldeman, and I direct Ehrlichman, and I direct Mitchell to get together tomorrow and then meet with me as to how we get this story out.
There was discrepancy within what the grand jury had heard and what Alderman said and what Nixon is claiming. We will need to wait for further investigation from here on out to see what comes of those who are involved in this groundbreaking scandal.
The trust of the American people in President Nixon begins to fade, and we are told that this is just the beginning. That is all we have for tonight, but we have taken big strides and are now knee-deep in the twists and ties of the story and the people involved in this political catastrophe.
Thank you for listening this evening, and stay tuned for more updates. In other words, the hurricane season has passed, so that's great news. And we'll catch you guys later on APUSH News.